Your Honor. Danielle.
Hold on. So, hello everyone. My name is Josh Blackman. I am the president of the Harlan Institute, and today we are holding a virtual Supreme Court competition with our friends at ConSource for the case of Zivotofsky v. Carey. Today in our virtual Supreme Court will be Danielle and Jacob from Valle, Texas, and they'll be arguing on behalf of the respondents in Zivotofsky v. Carey. Each counselor will have 20 minutes combined to make the argument. So, Counselor, whenever you're ready, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. May it please the Court, Your Honor, I, Danielle Thompson, and my partner Jacob Shaw represent the respondent, Honorable Secretary of State John Kerry. In the case before the Court today is, does a federal directs the Secretary of State to record the birthplace of an American citizen born in Jerusalem as Israel? If requested to do so, impermissibly infringes on the President's power to recognize foreign states. The answer is yes, of course. Therefore, Your Honor, we respectfully request that this Court uphold the lower court's decision, and we ask that you find in favor of the respondent. For any court case to reach the United States Supreme Court, it must be rooted in constitutional issues. For the petitioners to win today, they must convince you that somehow original intent of the Constitution included language that is not found in the Constitution presently. They are doing this by using dicta and original intent arguments. Why not argue the facts of this case? The simple reason is that the facts of this case show that the respondent is clearly right. Article 2, Section 3 states, "He, the President, shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all officers of the United States." The President has since the time of the Constitution done exactly that, and since 1787. The President has in control, along with the executive branch, Secretary of State, in charge of all United States embassies all around the world. My argument today is a case against original intent. Originalism or original intent. Originalists think that the best way to interpret the Constitution is to determine how the framers intended the Constitution to be interpreted. They look to several sources to determine this intent, including contemporary writings from the framers, newspaper articles, the Federalist Papers, and notes from the Constitution Convention itself. Originalists consider the original intent to be the most pure way of interpreting the Constitution. The opinions of the framers were, for the most part, well documented. If there is an unclear term or phrase in the Constitution, who better to explain it than those who wrote it? Now, originalists also failed to realize that people can change their minds. In 2004, Secretary of State John Kerry said he was for the Iraq War, when before he said he was against it. In 2008, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and President Obama said that they supported the Armenian Genocide Resolution. Now in 2015, President Obama, on the 100th anniversary of the genocide, did not support it, even though he said he would do it in 2008. He'd be the first American president to sign it. And when Hillary Clinton was asked about the genocide in 2013, she said, "This is a question for the historians to settle." Or the comments by Republican John Marshall, which appears to support the question.
Counselor, if I can, hold on. If I can, do you hear the echo?
There's no echo.
Okay. So if I can interrupt, Counselor, you seem to be making an argument against the original, because you're arguing that people change their minds, and it's certainly true that people change their minds. But as a court, how else are we supposed to understand the meaning of the Constitution, except by looking at the text and how those who enacted it thought it meant? I mean, are you saying the courts would just change your mind the same way politicians would?
Well, Your Honor, what we're arguing today is that you can't base off arguments on original intent, because if you go off arguments like that, you have to look at everything both ways. You can't just have cherry picks on which you want to go off at. For example, if we go off original intent, what the framers were saying, then there wouldn't be women allowed to speak in court today. there wouldn't be any
Well,
rights.
Counselor, I appreciate that there's some problems with originalism more broadly, but let's try and keep the debate limited to the issues here we have today. We have discussions about Armenian genocide and other topics. Let's talk about the recognition power. How do you recommend this court should understand the recognition power? What should we look to?
Well, recognition power is, of course, for the president to do so. And what we're trying to do here is keep a balance between Congress and the president. Congress has right to make bills and make their laws, but they cannot override the president's power to do so. As we know, we have the checks and balances of the system.
But if there's a checks and balance, that Congress would check the recognition power, right? Wouldn't that cut against your position that Congress does have a role here?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Kind of blurring out.
You mentioned that there are checks and balances, which we agree with. So shouldn't it be the case here that Congress can check the recognition power? Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think you guys are muted. Danielle, I'm sorry. Julie, did you mute them by accident?
I'm muted.
Okay. So go ahead, Danielle. I'm sorry. I didn't interrupt you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So again, your question was?
How if there's a separation of powers, there's checks and balances. Shouldn't Congress be able to check the recognition power?
Congress, of course, helps the president lay vault everything, but they can't override the president's power. It has to be that limit set there. And what we're arguing today is that the president has the power to do that since he's the organ of the country to do so. Not that they can't do it, that they can't override him.
Right, but can't Congress have a role in the recognition power at all?
They shouldn't be able to. No, of course, because it's the president's power to do that.
Where do we get that? Where do you get that from?
For example, in Article 2, Section 3 says that the president's the commander-in-chief, and he has since been the organ of the country and has his roles to place, and Congress can't simply override him.
Well, that may be true, but doesn't Congress have a role in declaring war, for example?
That's true. They do have a power to do that, but there's still limits and bases that have to go by with the president.
Counselor, can I ask another question? First of all, can you hear me?
No, I didn't get that.
Okay. So my question.
Julie, I have a suggestion. Try to mute while you're speaking. Mute your computer. Just turn the volume while you're speaking.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna just give you 1 second before you answer for me to unmute my computer for your reply. Is there no feedback? Josh, can you give me a thumbs up?
No, sorry.
Is it still bad?
No, this won't take a period of time. Don't worry. We'll add another.
Okay. Josh, what I'm going to do is just give you my question in the chat.
Okay. Okay, while just Silverberg is asking her question, I'll continue to ask mine. So, Counselor, ask me this question. You don't like originalism. How should a court go about resolving this issue?
Originalism?
You don't like originalism, you made that clear. So how should this court go about resolving this case if we don't look at our history and text?
Well, the Constitution, of course. We have to follow the basis of that, what's been there, what's been said in the Constitution. We can't just go off the basis of what original intent is, Your Honor.
But the Constitution, is there recognition power mentioned anywhere in the Constitution?
Well, yeah, Article 2, Section 3.
I don't see recognition power, do you?
Well, it has the basic rules of what the president's supposed to do.
But it's nothing but recognition.
If I may, Your Honor, I believe my partner is trying to say, in regarding Article 2, Section 3, because it speaks of the president's ability to receive foreign ambassadors and ministers, it is a clear indication by our founding fathers that it is intention of the founding fathers to give president recognition. For example, the president will be able to recognize foreign ambassadors and ministers without first recognizing said country the ambassadors and ministers will be coming from. Therefore, he would have to have the recognition power to recognize said country where he can receive said ambassadors. And the linkage there proves that the recognition power has always been within the confines of the executive branch as opposed to the legislative branch.
And I'm passing on a question from my quiet sister, Justice Silverbrook. Is that the same as the recognition power, though? Is the power to receive ambassadors equivalent to deciding what countries to recognize? I mean, couldn't recognition come before the reception of ambassadors? Couldn't Congress have some decision saying, okay, that's the ambassador of France, so you should receive that ambassador?
Sorry about the bell there. Well, Your Honor, we definitely do believe that there is some role by Congress to play in this in recognition. For example, Congress, as you said before, can declare war. They also can make treaties with other nations. However, Congress is the face of our nation in a matter of diplomatic affairs. The president is. He can't be made to speak out of both sides of his mouth. And because he's able to receive foreign ambassadors, while the said country could be recognized first, before those ambassadors could be received, the president will still have to recognize that country first. Congress doesn't do so. They're not in that process. It's unilaterally through the executive branch, and the president has the utmost authority to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. Let me ask another question. If this power is so exclusive, then why did the president not veto it? Why did the president sign this law if it was unconstitutional?
Well, Your Honor, I can't specifically speak for George Bush when he had this law on his desk and this bill, and whether or not to sign it or not. But he did openly state that he did not believe in it, that he would not follow it, and he believed it was unconstitutional. And the Obama administration has also followed suit under that. He may have chosen to veto it, Your Honor. That veto could have been then overridden by Congress again, so he may have thought that it was just a lost cause. He may have thought it was the best interest of the nation at that time to not have a quarrel with Congress regarding already the intense foreign relations that were happening at this time. While I can't speak for the matter, Your Honor, we do know that this law can be overturned now by you, the justices, and ruling it is unconstitutional, and that this matter is necessarily a matter of whether or not the president signed it or not, whether or not it's constitutionally relevant, whether it's a constitutional objective by Congress, and certainly it's not in this case, as you can rule.
But you know, should we put some stock on the executive thought it was good enough to sign the law? I mean, why should the businesses, the executive branches mistakes?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, could you please repeat your question?
Why should the courts be in the business of getting rid of laws the president couldn't himself veto?
Because, for example, again, at that time, Your Honor, not at that time, but the rule of them, the role of the Supreme Court in this is to decide whether or not the law is unconstitutional. Specifically, given that this law was presented, and first the Justice versus Clinton went under as a constitutional issue, but that was ruled against by this court at first. But now we have to decide whether or not there's actually a constitutional objective. And whether or not this law is vetoed or not, that's not the issue. The issue before the court whether it's a constitutional, and then you can force the executive to be subservient to Congress in this matter. But you can't, because it's not only is it unconstitutional, it warrants a huge power grab by Congress, and there's severe repercussions for our foreign relations in the future if Congress is allowed to do so.
Okay, thank you. Counselor, let's go back to history for a bit. How have these issues been dealt with in other presidents of American history?
Your Honor, I'm going to ask you to repeat your question.
Sure. We actually fired our composition last week, so this is actually easier. So how have these issues been dealt with historically through past presidential administrations with respect to its recognition power?
Well, for example, Your Honor, Congress has always sought to provide bills laws to be signed by previous presidents in which they would have some control over policies with passports, for example. And they've done this through ways of regarding and saying in the confines of the Constitution. In this case, Your Honor, we're not saying in the confines of the Constitution, however. Two examples we cite and as precedent as for Congress being able to have certain instances in which they've been able to do this is when Congress changed the Emergency Highway Act in the early 1970s, when there was an emergency oil crisis with OPEC, for example. They required all states to change their highway speed limits to 55 to be the maximum. If states did not do this, they restricted their highway funds, or highway apportionment funds. The same thing was done again, Your Honor, when Congress required the drinking age to be raised to 21 in all states. They didn't have a constitutional objective to do this, or constitutional authority to do so, because the 10th Amendment states that states must be able to regulate certain types of things that aren't enumerated in the Constitution. And they didn't give restricted funds and withhold funds unless these states were being given to adhere to Congress.
I'm sorry, can you give me a specific example where a past presidential administration exercised recognition power, focusing on the early history of our nation?
Right, Your Honor. So I'm sorry if I wasn't answering your question directly. I was just trying to link that, again, Congress in the past has been allowed to do certain things that aren't enumerated in the Constitution by having its power of the purse, which it could do in this case. Various examples are included within the context of our history. For example, George Washington in choosing to recognize the rebellious government in France. FDR choosing to recognize the rebellious and revolt with Vladimir Lenin in Russia during, Stalin in World War II, recognizing that new regime. At various times throughout history, the president has had to, and has been Congress exclusively doing that because the president is the face of our nation and he directs foreign affairs of foreign nations. Most recently with Obama and Cuba, when Obama, just a few days ago, I believe, took Cuba off the known terrorist list. He did not have to go through any congressional approval to do that. In fact, it was solely through him, the executive branch.
Counsel, it's not clear if you're allowed to do that all times. There actually are serious congressional limitations on the president recognizing Cuba as a country, but we'll put that one to the side for the moment.
Well, yes, Your Honor. Certainly it's not unilateral. It's not completely the president all by himself. But for the most part, the specific recognition of Cuba, as well as the fact that the president himself, he's the one meeting with Raul Castro, and FDR was the one meeting with Joseph Stalin. All these types of diplomatic relations was done through the president, the executive branch, as opposed to that of any congressional member. The congressional members aren't diplomats themselves. The president is the chief diplomat of our nation, and therefore the recognition power is reposed within him, as opposed to any congressional member in the time of our history. With that, Your Honor, since my partners yielded the rest of the time of our debate to me, I'd like to begin my formal argument, if I may.
Please.
If it may please the court, Your Honor, my name is Jacob Shaw, and to represent the respondent, Secretary of State John Kerry, within this case today. Ask you to please also apply my partner Danielle to his arguments on recognition power and allow me to continue our case and affirmation of the respondent's side today. Your Honor, again, the issue on appeal today is as follows, which is whether a federal statute, their Secretary of State, on request to record the birthplace of an American citizen born in Jerusalem, as born in Israel, on a consular report or birth abroad, and on a United States passport is unconstitutional. The Gun statute impermissibly infringes on a president's exercise of the recognition power reposing exclusively in him. Your Honor, to answer this question undoubtedly, yes. In fact, I'd like to point out, Your Honor, the words of the founding father, former president, Thomas Jefferson, and saying that the transaction of business with foreign nations is executive altogether. It belongs into head of that department, speaking of the president, except that to such portions that are especially submitted to the Senate, exceptions to be construed strictly. Therefore, we have to assert these three remaining main arguments, Your Honor, as well as support the decisions of the lower courts in this case today. First, the inefficiency of Congress. So point A, Congress only works 3 to 3.5 days a week, Your Honor. The original intent was that Congress would be mostly foremen as opposed to full-time workers. Specifically, they have over 3 months of vacation time a year. Thus, they aren't fully equipped and were never created, Your Honor, to ever hold the recognition power, if any follows an intent for that. Second, step 1B, Your Honor, we see that Congress is required to pass an annual budget, but they haven't done so a fiscal budget in almost 20 years now. And we ask, and we assert today the question, Your Honor, if they can't do the job the Constitution is supposed to do, then how are you going to do about jobs that they aren't supposed to do, that they were never enumerated to do, such as recognition power? So points here in this matter, if it took almost 6 months for Congress to vote on Loretta Lynch, the new Attorney General, a relatively simple task that was completely promulgated by them, again, if they can't do this simple job that's enumerated to them, how can they do a job that's out of their scope? Recognition power. And subpoint D, the Gallup poll for April 2015 has Congress's approval rating at below 15%. Certainly a section of government that has such a low approval rating by the American populace is not conducive of a diplomat or the face of our nation in foreign affairs that would hold recognition power. With these inefficiencies of Congress recognized and observed, Your Honor, we now ask a question to you. Do we want a low-performing, vacation-going, slow-acting, gridlock-loving group of untrained professionals handling our foreign policy when they can't handle their current jobs that are constitutionally required to do? And we say not, Your Honors. That only is not in the best interest of the United States as a whole, but for other nations abroad. Second, the burden of proof that's placed upon Congress today has also not been met. In the case of Barr, the burden of proof is on Congress to prove that they have a compelling interest to exert their power over the president in this context of recognition. However, not only can Congress now fulfill the burden of proof in this matter, as they don't have the constitutional authority to do so, some of our first main argument, but the court ruling in the petitioner's favor will warrant a huge paragraph by Congress. It completely revoke the system of checks and balances the Supreme Court has sought to instill between the branches, in all branches, was notably this was seen in Law Beavers and Noel Canning to deal again with the executive versus legislative branch in terms of power. Clearly, this is because you'd be allowing Congress to contradict the longstanding practices of this country, and this allowed Congress sufficient standing to contradict other longstanding practices of this country, as long as they felt they had a need to do so, they wanted to do so. Again, essentially, our ruling in favor of the petitioner, Dibzowski, harms every other government branch by authorizing Congress to be above them in future affairs. Clearly, the president, holding and directing the force of the nation, innately has the ability to recognize foreign states. For Congress to put away that power and take over themselves, again, there must be some compelling interest presented. But only that they not presented one, Your Honor. Anyone that could be thought of hasn't been met in this case. Asserting such an interest places a heavy burden upon petitioners in this case, but they haven't met this burden at all. Certainly not in the first two phases of this case when they've lost, and certainly not in this case either, which is why you should vote for the respondent today. And last, Your Honor, the superfluousness of this law warrants it being nothing more than unconstitutional. As affirmed by Justice Security further, what makes Section 214D more constitutionally troublesome, however, is that its utter lack of useful function and the service regulating foreign commerce or U.S. property makes manifest that, in practice, its only actual function would be to require executives to speak out of both sides of his mouth and foreign diplomacy on the question of which nation ought to have sovereignty over Jerusalem. Further, information would provide, Your Honor, would be less specific and this less conducive to Congress's objective of the passport system identifying persons within our country, because certainly put a place into Israel is less specific than Jerusalem. And of course, that is the way ordinary honest as well as in the United States will understand U.S. passport practice if Congress rules in Dibzowski's favor. In practice, such a law asks the president to openly contradict himself to foreign audiences as well as the United States with no justifiable reason for doing so. The president will be set by an affirmation of this law, force the president to adhere to Congress in recognition, and proclaim something to other countries that he believes to be false. More so, Congress will be allowed to do this with no constitutional objective, as they haven't presented one in any phase of this case, Your Honors. As a result, a power imbalance created with this law, one that revokes our system of checks and balances, which is a cornerstone of our governing system. Essentially, Your Honor.
You have 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, essentially, Your Honor, by voting for petition in this case today, you'll be effectively taking away the recognition power that presidents utilized ever since our first president and that of George Washington. Today, it is a city, Your Honor, but tomorrow, certainly it will be a country. With that, we pray that you find in favor of the respondent, Secretary of State John Kerry in this case today, and thereby affirm the decisions of two lower courts in this case. If there are no further questions, Your Honor, I will retire and thank you for your time and consideration in this matter.
Okay. Thank you so much. So first I have to apologize. Unfortunately, Justice Silverberg's power dropped out here in Washington. She sent me a text message that her power dropped out. That's why she's not here. So she won't be able to congratulate you. Let me congratulate you on behalf of Harlan Institute-ConSource. You've both done a wonderful job. It brings us great pride and joy that we have young students committed to our Constitution and are dedicated to advocacy and making cogent arguments for our court. We are very proud of both of you. And we're also proud of your teacher, who's done a great job. He's been with us for a number of years. and we're very thankful we've been able to participate. So thank you very much. We will be in touch probably later tonight with the winners. And if I don't talk to you directly again, or maybe I will, best of luck for next year for college and beyond.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you.